Hey everybody, Michael Pavlovich here. So in our previous video, we went over the basic functionality for scanning in small and medium-sized objects with the CR-ScanFerret plugged into our laptop, using a turntable to rotate the object in most cases, and kind of staying local in my office. In this video, what we're going to do, instead of having it tethered to a laptop, I'm going to make full use of the ScanFerret's portability by plugging it into the handheld battery tripod and letting my Galaxy S22 do the capturing and processing on some larger objects, both indoor and outdoor. And I'm going to talk about this more in depth later, but I want to mention how nice it is to have scale built into the scan models. So even with fast accuracy rather than high quality accuracy for smaller objects, it was still pretty darn accurate. So all of the scans end up being the correct size relative to each other, and with real world measurements, when you take it into a program, it'll be scaled appropriately. For example, with one of the squares on the ottoman that I scanned in, it was 22 centimeters in real life, and in the 3D model, it's right at about 22 centimeters. So even as a supplement to photogrammetry work you might do out in the field, if you want a built-in model scale, I say go ahead and grab a version with your ScanFerret. Why not? Speaking of photogrammetry, I figured I'd do some face and body scans just for fun. My expectations were at 0 because I tried to do single camera photogrammetry for organic, slightly moving objects with honestly pretty crummy results. But I have to say, with the ScanFerret, it's actually really forgiving for both semi-moving, like humans trying to stand still, and then really moving objects, like my dog. And while it does generally take some practice for good results with the ScanFerret to get, enough feel for how it works, I threw my wife in the deep end, very little instruction, in a cramped office, bad lighting, a dog bugging her while she was trying to scan, and she was still able to get results. She got a great result from my head, pretty decent result for the body scan considering all the issues. And now I'm obsessed with scanning my dog, so at every possible opportunity, I don't even have the ScanFerret on me. It's actually downstairs because whenever she takes a nap, I go in and I try to scan her. Anyway, I had a ton of fun trying this hardware out, and I didn't know if it was going to be something I ended up using long term, but I think for like scanning in props for maybe doing some mocap work with a certain prop, scanning it in with the real scale reference, grabbing secondary and primary forms for stuff I might have to remodel. All really easy, fun things I can use this for that'll get me results on the fly as I scan it in, and then I can just send it over to whatever computer I'm going to be working on. So yeah, I think this is a pretty decent piece of hardware that I'm going to actually end up using for all sorts of cool things in the future. All right, so here's a refresher on our Creality scanner. So here's the Ferret scanner at the very top. That gets plugged into this middle part here that is going to hold our phone. And then here is the bottom part that is the battery bank as well as the tripod. We're just going to kind of use this as a handle while we're using it. And again, this is a rechargeable battery that's going to power our scanner while we're using it. So to connect the scanner to our phone so we can be portable and have it not have to be tethered to a laptop, I'm going to go ahead and plug in this USB-C and then tighten this up. And then for my phone, I'm going to have the plugs on the same side here for the Ferret. So I'm going to say, take my thumb, push my phone up into here so it gets nice and snug in here. I'm going to connect the Ferret to my phone and then the power to the handle / tripod. So now the Ferret's being powered into my phone here. So I'm going to go into the Creality scans. Go ahead and zoom in just a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to give it permission to access. So here we are. Now if I tilt it this way, you're going to see these are the previous projects that we've done. So if I just click on one of those, that'll load up the model. There we go. So we can go ahead and zoom in, zoom out, tumble around, go into the different view modes to turn off RGB or just see your mesh. And then we can always hop back out of this model to go back to our menu here. And if we go up here to the left, that is our settings. That's our user manual, model storage, clearing our cache, all that good stuff. And then again, going back out here, this at the bottom is where we do our new scan. And then if you just touch any of these, you can set it up for object to be small, medium, or large, face or body, geometry or texture, fast or high quality, color or no color. So in this case, we'll just say small, texture, etc. And then we just hit new scan. That'll take us into scan mode. So if I turn it this way, so again, the Ferret's pointing outwards. Here is our scanning interface. And I will say, while you're scanning, don't be afraid to go in here to the IR sensor and change it from automatic to manual and adjust these settings as needed to not have too much blue, not have too much red, just looking for gray. And but of course, while you're starting, you can always go in here. And same thing for the color, you can set it to automatic or manual and then adjust as you scan. Super easy. And I guess just for demonstration purposes, I'll hold my arm out here so you can see it's picking up, starting to pick up my arm here. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start with my arm being in there, and then I'm just going to kind of move this thing around, and it's going to slowly start scanning my hand and my arm. And then again, I'm just going to kind of move this around, and then once I'm ready, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit next, and that'll start my optimization. So there is our optimized point cloud. I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a mesh just by clicking next. There we go. So there's the mesh that it captured, and if we want to apply the texture, we're just going to hit next. That'll do our color mapping. And there we go. We've got my hand scanned in. Nice. And if we're ready to share this, all we got to do is hit this little share down here, and we can throw that onto Google Drive or message it to somebody. It'll package it up for you as a zip file, and then they can go and apply their textures to your geometry that you have, and you're good to go. So this we went through, I did some indoor scanning and outdoor scanning. This one went really fast and was actually really easy. And one thing I didn't think about was the ability to do architectural previs and the scales built in. So for photogrammetry, I'd usually have to scale the final result. These, and I'll show you afterwards in ZBrush, measuring out the scale comes in. So everything is scaled relative to each other in all your scans, and it's real world scale. So for architectural previs purposes, that's kind of awesome, I think. Again, just kind of a stress test, like, hey, let's take it outside, do outdoor lighting. Of course, in Texas, June, we're having a heat wave, and it was actually super humid and overcast, so kind of ideal photogrammetry settings, natural settings. The lighting was nice and diffuse, so it actually worked out in my favor. So I didn't really stress test it as far as like bright daylight or anything like that. But for these things, this wasn't really much of a stress test. I thought maybe the black areas on the plastic were semi-reflective and might give it a hard time, but honestly, I think it did great. Same thing on the truck that we're about to see. The black tires and the black plastic on the grill turned out great. Of course, obviously the reflective areas not so much. And then this first pass I did on the truck was in the morning, and it actually did surprisingly well. Whenever you would hit the big broad areas like the hood and the quarter panels, it would get kind of lost and not know where it was. So that's when like tracking dots or putting a little dry erase marker or something on your truck or car might work out in your favor, especially if you have a big broad areas that is having a hard time. I'm basically going between, you'll see me jumping between like, okay, it knows what this object is. Now when I move up here, it'll lose track of where objects are. And that makes scanning difficult because you have to be kind of close for the IR sensor to pick up. So I put some Rococo stickers onto the truck. It helped a little bit, but I would have to have put a lot more tracking markers on here. And you can see the reflection and the shadows. This is a really difficult thing. I put some, what is that, diatomaceous earth powder on the truck, and again, this is not an ideal situation. You don't want to, obviously I wasn't expecting any results from the glass. I wasn't expecting any results from the reflective metal on the truck, but I don't know, it did better than I thought it would, honestly. But this is something I would need to actually go out there with like tracking markers and try to get this to work. I would say when it did work, it worked pretty well. And then I needed an easy win, so I went and grabbed something out of the garage that this worked a lot better. So now I'm going to step through some of the models here, and this is the ottoman that we scanned. And one really cool thing I wanted to talk about was scale. So in order to get this to be it's a generic unit when I bring anything into ZBrush, but you can have it use the real world units that the object might have built into it. There's just one step I need to do, and that is going in here to Z plugin. And you won't have to do this if you're in like a CAD software or something. It'll just bring it in at the unit scale that's appropriate, I believe. But in ZBrush, I'm going to go in here to Z plugin, Scale Master, and I'm going to set my scene scale. I'm just going to set this to centimeters because that's what it's scanned in as. And when I'm scanning this stuff, Remember that for the large objects, it automatically scans in. I think it's called fast. I'll put it up here. It's called like faster quality or faster, but you know, not high quality, but faster basically. So if you're scanning a small object, I think that the accuracy will be even more impressive. But even for this large, you know, piece of furniture object here, if I hit W, that goes into gizmo mode. I can now hit Y to switch into transpose mode, so I can drag out a transpose line, and you'll see my transpose line has been set up to centimeters. So if I go through here and I just pick one of these, so I'm going to go from one seam to the next, I'm going to overshoot it just a little bit. You can see it's just shy of that last one there. So if I go ahead and count these out, 21, 22, so you know, 22 and a little bit in order to get to that the full width of that square that makes up this ottoman here. And if I load up this image here, you'll see I just went out there and scanned it in. So this is 1 through 22 centimeters. So from one edge of, and it's just one miscellaneous square. I don't know which square it is on the ottoman, so they may vary slightly square to square, but it's about 22 centimeters. So you can see this is about, you know, 22 and a little bit for this particular square on here. So again, I'm not sure if that's that exact square, but pretty accurate. So as I'm scanning stuff in, everything's going to come in scale accurate. If I go in here and turn off this truck, for example, and I have my garbage can here, I'm going to go ahead and switch back my gizmo here. So I'm going to put the trash can here, and this is all going to be relatively scaled so that, and it's real world scale, so it's scaled relative to each other, but also if I go through here and put in a human being, this is how tall I would be compared to these other objects. So how cool, or a dog. Let me go ahead and put Whiskey in here. So here's a doggy. Let's move her over to the side here. So there you go. Everything is nicely and appropriately scaled as an object. So I think that's pretty awesome for me. So anyway, we'll go back up here to the ottoman and we'll just take a quick look here. So again, here is the model itself. I'm going to switch here. So I can go in here to switch my materials. I can also just have these down here in my interface, swapping these out. So if I turn off the texture, which I have loaded in here. Incidentally, if you load in a texture into ZBrush, you'll need to go in here to import. Just grab a miscellaneous texture here and take the texture and flip it vertically and then apply it to your mesh, and then the texture will show up appropriately. But I'll go ahead and turn that texture off so we can just look at the model here. You can see this is the accuracy of just the geometry, and again, this is the larger, slightly less accurate version of scanning because these are larger objects, but still did an amazing job, I think. Pretty cool. And we'll go down here to the chair. Also, when you're doing cleanup work on these types of objects here, if you know it's symmetrical, minus, you know, a symmetrical pillow, I suppose, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick mirror and then, oops, go ahead and put this back into world 0 here. So if I do like a mirror across the x-axis and then mirror and weld across the x, that'll keep the same footprint of the overall chair, but you can see I can take the better part of the scan and just mirror it over, and now I've got a more complete scan. So if you just had one side that did a little better than the other, obviously you can just quickly mirror your objects. If you do want to look at a cleanup process for something like this, I did do a scan data cleanup of the Xbox 360 controller. As you can see, this is the small object that we scanned in from the previous video, and then we go through here and show the cleanup process, just kind of going through and very, you know, and we get into a little bit of character animation here too, but most of this video is just going through and doing any bespoke modeling for something that didn't scan appropriately, and then using the primary and secondary forms from your scan data to go ahead and just quickly rebuild in ZBrush. You know, I think the whole thing took about an hour to just clean this up pretty nicely into something usable as a prop. So anyway, there's our chair. Our trash can here, switch back over. It scanned all the letters. I wasn't sure if I was doxing myself by having all the letters up there, so I got rid of them. I don't think it really matters that much, but just in case. So again, here you can see, and again, these are usually problematic areas for photogrammetry as well. Anything that's super shady and stuff in there, but you can see it picked up everything really nicely. And again, if we go down here and we turn the texture off, and you can see in the video of, you know, just prior to this, going through and scanning, it was a pretty quick scan. I mean, I guess I went around this thing a couple times, but it's a fairly quick process. I will say, when it's connected to your phone and your, you know, even if you're plugged into the battery, your phone processing will eat your battery, because it's basically capturing your phone and then processing your phone and meshing on your phone and texturing on your phone and then exporting the model on your phone. All of those things have to happen on your phone. So yes, it will eat your battery up. I will say, as far as powering the Ferret itself, that hardly seems to take any battery. I charged that handle once, and it's been working like a champ ever since, and it hasn't really lost any bars. So I don't think the Ferret takes that much juice, but I do think your phone battery doing all the processing for your models, it is a little intensive, so it will drain your battery. And here's the shop vac here. Again, pretty cool, pretty good. And again, this was a large object, and I was just kind of going. I just did a couple passes on it, so you could probably do this with a little bit more manual settings, or really eyeballing the exposure and making sure you're doing a really good job scanning. But just for a general prop to put somewhere or used as a guide for building, you know, totally serviceable. Let me go ahead and turn this texture off, and we'll switch back over here. So here's the model itself, and again, I could have probably done a few more passes around these weird areas, but again, any areas that have holes in them or deep recesses, and then the shadow areas in there, I probably could have spent a little more time there, and the weirdo areas over here in the wires and stuff. But and then finally the truck. I wasn't expecting anything out of this, and as you can see from the video, you might not be able to tell, but my truck was really dirty, so I was like, hey, maybe if I have a really dirty truck, it won't be that reflective. In the morning, it actually did a pretty good job, and the tires and the front part of the plastic, it did an excellent job, I think. I wasn't expecting to get any glass objects like up here in the windshield or in the headlight here, and even in the metal areas, it actually did a fairly passable job. So for a cloudy day, it worked really well. Of course, when I went out there later and the sun was shining and it was a reflective surface, it had a really hard time. You know, these really broad surfaces, you have to be so close for the IR sensor to pick it up. It was getting lost in these big broad areas. I've tried putting stickers in there, but looking back, I probably should have taken a dry erase marker and just marked it up, given a lot of texture just so I could go through and scan it. Because again, the material I don't really care about. I can always apply a material later. But just like I said with the chair, I can go through here. I can do like a mirror and weld across the x-axis and start getting more of my scan. So really, I only need to scan in half the truck, kind of, and then just mirror it over if I'm interested in doing that. But yeah, I think all things considered, it did a better job than I thought it would. It was actually fairly accurate to what I was capturing. So I don't know, maybe I'll practice a little bit more. And again, you got to remember, this is metal. This is a reflective surface. It's not set up to have great results, but it still managed to grab a fair amount. So if I can get this thing marked up in a way that it could latch onto that data and keep moving along and keep capturing these surfaces, I might be able to get something fairly passable. But again, that's something I'll just have to practice with. All right, so this is after I could get my wife to stop smiling. I went through and I scanned her face. And honestly, it may seem weird as a character artist to be like, oh, it's kind of an afterthought to scan in a human face and a body, but I've had such bad experiences with photogrammetry trying to get a decent usable scan that I had no real expectations for this. Now you can see there, that texture didn't really work that great, but the model was really passable. This one here too this is my wife's first time scanning anything, and we're in a really cramped room. So given that, and the fact that I wasn't obviously motionless, I'm a human being. So it's her first time scanning something. I'm kind of moving around. My dog's in the background, you can see, and she's trying to wrestle the dog away while she's scanning because the dog has to be involved in everything. Given all of that, I wasn't going to put this in here, but then I was like, you know what? I think it's worth it. I think to see how forgiving this is. I even went through there and I started scanning the dog who's getting treats and moving her arms. And if I was to try to do this with photogrammetry, it'd be a non-starter, at least in my experience. It's been a while, but at least since I've done photogrammetry, this is actually pretty forgiving. Like, if I've got a moving dog here, and the fact that it got any results at all blew my mind. And truth be told, I've kind of become obsessed with scanning my dog, but I don't know. I just thought this was interesting enough to put in there. All right, so now that we've already talked about just these little things that are the large items that I've scanned, but I'm going to go ahead and turn on all of the body work here. So you can see for this head here, I actually didn't even bring in the texture map, but you saw how fast it went in the video. It was like scan, 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 and I had zero expectations because, you know, obviously the model's moving. She was smiling, you know, halfway through the beginning, and I was amazed at how forgiving the scanner was. Much more forgiving than photogrammetry tends to be when you're putting that stuff through processing. So even if, and again, we were in a really cramped environment. Obviously I was moving all around, and she wasn't able to, and the dog was bugging her too while we were in there. So again, with zero expectations, it still managed to, get a decent face scan. And you can see, like I mentioned before, everything is relative, everything is scaled appropriately. So if I go out of solo mode here and hit W, let's move this up. So, if I had a full body scan of my wife here, even with my body, here's my body and then here's my face, these are all comparable, and again, this may have been my wife's first or second scan. Either the body was first or the face was first. I forget which. But again, she had zero. I just basically talked her through it like, hey, take this, move it around, good luck, go. And she was able to basically scan in my face. And like I said, textures may be a little bit hit or miss, but the geometry was surprisingly usable. Again, I had zero expectations, especially when we're talking about moving animals here. So I have become obsessed with scanning my dog. I basically have the Ferret scanner next to my end table in my bedroom, and I can grab it out of there when she falls asleep, and I can literally just go in and scan her. And like I said, it ends up being better than it has any reason to be. Like, and again, it's fur, so it's not great, the photogrammetry. She's moving around, which isn't great, but it honestly, I don't know, as weird as it is to be like blown away by this, I actually was very pleasantly surprised by the fact that I could have my dog actively getting treats and still get something usable. So imagine if I was actually well prepared in an environment that was conducive to using the scanner appropriately, I could probably get even better results. Considering I was expecting zero results, I got far better results than I thought I would. So anyway, I just figured this was interesting. And like I said, for a character artist, it seems weird that these might be kind of an afterthoughts to go through, but honestly, I wasn't expecting much, and I got more than I expected. So, clothing, and again, if I could go through and scan in an environment that wasn't cramped and had my dog bugging her, and again, she was brand new to this. She had never used the scanner before in her life. So, with a little bit of practice and stuff, and I can even go in here and edit out my little tummy here. Let's just grab that move brush and whoop, flatten that out. There we go, nice and trim. So anyway, thought you might be interested in seeing some early, quick, easy results there.